We are going to start off with we're going to stick to really brief introductions to start. We're going to do our names and pronouns and a visual description if you'd like. And then we will do a brief somatic practice, establish note-taking duties, and then do our committee agreements and check-in from there. Sound good? All righty. So I will start because I'm talking. I'm Emily Megas Russell, she, her pronouns. I'm wearing a black and white striped turtleneck, and I have a white skin and curly hair and a white background. Thanks.
I can go next. Shay Witzberger, she, her, or they, them pronouns. Visual description, white skin, wool hat, work romper, floodlight, outdoor background.
I can go next. Lana Dever, she, her pronouns. Visual description, I'm a Black woman with light skin, a red hat, glasses, and red lips.
I'm Laura Stamis, she, her pronouns. White skin, I have a checkered scarf and a nose piercing.
I can go next. I'm Kaz DeWolf. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. I'm a white guy with scruffy facial hair and a red plaid flannel shirt and green t-shirt on currently, and black plastic glasses. Check.
I'm Kelsey, she, her pronouns, and I just walked in the door and I'm still cold, so I'm wearing my jacket.
Hi, Annalise Griffin. I have on she, her pronouns. I'm on a black and white shirt. I'm white with white skin, and I have on headphones and a sort of whitish background.
Bob Ozer, white male, he, him pronouns, green flannel shirt, and the temperature said 40, and I thought it was much colder.
Maya Schulman-Ment, she, her pronouns. Apparently I have huge knots in my hair and a light skin, light background.
Thanks. And we have Drift on the phone. Drift, do you want to announce yourself? I think it's *6 for phone folks. I think it's *6 to unmute and *9 to raise your hand.
Hey everybody, Drift here. I use they, them pronouns.
Thanks, Drift. And Darlene, I think, is on her way. I just sent her the link. Great, thanks y'all. So let's take a moment to ground in. Shay, if you're able, will you watch the waiting room?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Great. So you're welcome to keep your camera on if you'd like. You also can turn it off. This is a big process we're engaged in together. It's also a really big week. So just want to take a moment here to see if we can land in our bodies before continuing our meeting. So you can keep your eyes open or closed, whatever feels better to you. Take a few moments just to settle your breath if possible. Sometimes just by bringing your attention to your breath, it's possible to settle it a bit. Sometimes it's not, and that's okay. And so taking a few moments to even out the breath, and then scan the body and just notice what's present. If it doesn't feel safe to do that, then don't do it. But as you bring your attention to your body, see if it's possible to find a place of grounding in the body, a ground, sort of like the earth, ground in your body. In some places where it might be common to find this ground, although it can be found anywhere. So you can listen to your own body first. But some places that it might be found is in the feet, where the feet connect to the ground. In the hips, maybe where your hips connect to the seat. In the diaphragm, just below the rib cage, the ground of the breath. In the collarbones, the shoulders. In the back of the neck, the occipital ridge, the base of the skull. At the eye sockets. And at the top of the head. So see if any of these places call your attention. A moment settling into a ground in your own body, something that might be of service to you over the next few days. And just take a couple of breaths. See if you can settle your mind and allow your mind to rest in this ground. Settle your breath. Allow your breath to rest on this ground. And then when you're ready, you can release the practice and make your way back to the group.
Thanks, Emily. Is anyone really excited about relieving Laura from notes? Anyone feeling like extremely jazzy about it? Nope. Some adorably hesitant eyeballs? No. Laura, do you consent to being a note taker again? Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, it's good.
That's
Thanks,
great.
Laura.
Emily, you want to screen share our committee agreements?
Sure do. So just give me one moment. Who do we have? We have two interpreters going. Who should I pin? All right, I'll pin. I think they both went away. Okay, I'll pin Christine. Thanks, Christine. And just a note to say thank you to both Christine and Janet for joining us today, our interpreters. Okay. All right. Would anyone like to read this first screen of our agreements?
I can read if you like.
Thanks, Kaz.
Okay. CSRC Agreements. In the process of doing work within the Community Safety Review Committee, we will aim to be curious, acknowledge that we come from different places and different life experiences, center anti-racism as foundational in this process, and center anti-oppression, including work to avoid and end racism, sexism, transphobia and homophobia, ableism, saneism, and all forms of oppression. Sanist oppression can look like pathologizing language, outing people's psychiatric labels, or engaging with people discriminatorily due to their psychiatric labeling or disability.
Thank you, Kaz. Is someone available to read the next slide?
I can read it.
Thanks.
Be kind whenever possible and use respectful language always. Use both and thinking instead of either or thinking whenever possible. Use whoa, ouch, oops to pause, acknowledge hurt, and take responsibility. Acknowledge or apologize when we hurt each other, even if we didn't intend harm. Hold space for probable good intentions while acknowledging that intention and impact both do matter. Welcome feedback and accountability from one another enthusiastically and give it generously. Acknowledge the contradictions.
Thanks, Annalise. All right, who's up for the last one?
Hold a larger vision of a big intergenerational world-changing work and honor realistically the short time frame and limited scope of this one effort inside of that long arc. Be generous and reverent of people's lived experiences, especially stigmatized experiences like incarceration, arrest, poverty, homelessness, abuse, and addiction. Check our biases individually and together. Work to attune to safety, value the quality of our human experiences together, and aim to make things safer while acknowledging that safety looks different for each person and is never guaranteed. Make change in our community through both the process and the production of
Outcomes is that last word. Thank you. And that, I believe, yeah, that is our last slide.
Can I make a request about that?
Yes.
The agreements. So we had talked about keeping the agreements alive and adding or altering them as needed. And I want to like make a moment for that just because I don't want to blast through that moment. And one of those, I want to hold a moment for that and say that, sorry, there's really loud trucks on the road. One of the things that I think we all agree about, but hasn't been explicitly put into our agreements, but is in the proposal and is elsewhere, is this idea. I'm going to preface it by saying I've just been holding some listening sessions this week. And I talked to some of you all in the police review arm committee meeting today, but I want to just name that people do have a lot of trepidation about sharing their experiences. People in organizations and people who've experienced policing and police and everybody. And a lot of that work that we have to do around that is just trust work. And Emily and I have written in our proposal and have a lot of experience in holding things radically confidentially. And I want to maybe put in our agreements that whatever we learn from people in this process, that we will, as I said in that committee meeting earlier, like apply what we learn to the process as the process is written as a team. That's like the primary reason to get this really sensitive information from people, and that we're really going to be like reverently holding that with total confidentiality. Our community members need to know that anybody who comes into contact with their information, most of the information that you all I'll see will already be de-identified, except for very specific exceptions, like if somebody wants to co-facilitate a space with the root or something, right? But like almost all the information you'll see is de-identified. But I think it would make me feel like we're extra showing up to our community that we're going to hold whatever we learn extremely confidentially in some wording if we don't feel like that's covered.
Do you want to add that in?
Sorry, I know we're going off schedule with that.
Do we want to
What's that, Lana?
do we want to at some point add that in before next meeting so we can say it in the beginning of our meetings? I 100% agree.
Great.
I do too. I think that's a really good idea.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't think there'd be like much disagreement about it, probably, but I think we're already feeling that way. I just want to affirm to everyone that that's the agreement that we're making.
And it's really important too, because I think a lot of us do work where we know that's sort of ingrained in confidentiality, how important it is. But in this process, the way we were just appointed by the select board basis on lived experience and various things, but not in like professional capacity. So it's just important that we have that clearly named, I think. So that's really helpful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So we had an episode here at Great River Terrace. It involved some tenants having an argument where there was then therefore a weapon brought out, and the cops came and they made everybody go back into their apartment because the guy had the gun, and we all went back into our apartments and stuff. But my question is the cops gave this guy a weapon back. After, you know, they talked to him and whatever, they gave him the weapon back, and it's in our lease that it's a violation to have any weapons on the premises. But there's also people here in recovery that are here through the Women's Freedom Center from abuse, and that's a trigger, a really bad trigger. And for the cops to give this guy back a weapon, as crazy as this person is, I just don't agree with the actions that the cops did that day. And I just wanted to bring that up to the select board because of the fact that we need some help here at Great River Terrace. And I can't do this all on my own. And I'm trying my hardest to keep this place on, standing grounds. And it's getting harder and harder because of the pandemic. Everybody's going crazy and drugs are being brought on the property, and we got people in recovery. We got people that are suffering from abuse. We got people that, are struggling hard. And I just took it upon myself to call the Vermont State Housing Authority and ask for help. And I haven't heard back from nobody. So my question is what can we do about the police allowing this person to have a weapon, knowing it's a violation of our lease?
Darlene, I see that. Well, first of all, hi. You came in after the introductions, so I just want to give you a chance to also name yourself and say hi. And I see that Kaz has a hand up. So Kaz, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like an answer to your question. I just kind of wanted to comment because I heard you say like as crazy as this guy is, and that was kind of an ouch moment for me as someone who's psychiatrically disabled, and just wanted to chime in that a lot of those people who you're talking about who are have been finding safety, getting out of abusive situations, or seeking recovery are probably also psychiatrically disabled, and that I mean, I can't be sure about that, but like often, and also that folks who are psychiatrically disabled / labeled are not more likely to commit violence than the general population. So I just wanted to put that out there so that we're not stigmatizing or speaking in a discriminatory way towards folks.
Yeah, no, I apologize. I didn't mean for it to come out that way. I meant like that day in that moment, it was like everything was all heated and he just wasn't in his right frame of mind. And I just felt very uncomfortable for the cops to give him back that weapon, knowing he's already aimed it at 2 people here on the grounds.
That's certainly a scary situation.
And my daughter was one of them. So yeah, I flipped out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cass, for living the agreements, and thank you, Darlene, for receiving that feedback as well. Kelsey, you have a hand up.
I wanted to say 2 things, but thank you so much, Darlene, for bringing that up tonight and sort of the immediate moment. I think that's so important for us to remember that these are things that are ongoing. don't have an answer to your question right now, but I wanted to say thank you for doing that and to be vulnerable and say how hard it is. And to follow up with Kaz, thank you for speaking up. And I did notice that you, in a way, backpedaled a little bit, but people seeking safety from abuse are not always or even necessarily often psychiatrically labeled, right? Like they could be, but that's something that's really important to me that we always put out there too, that
Oh yeah.
survivors aren't necessarily, right? But I know what your intention was, the whole picture. So thank you.
I mean, often people's not always. Often people getting out of abusive situations have PTSD or are labeled with PTSD. That I've gotten out of domestic violence situations and worked with a lot of psychiatric survivors who have also. So yeah, I didn't mean to imply that always. It's often.
Right. No, I know, but all of these things intersect, right? And it gets really confusing. And Darlene brought something to us that was so important, I think well-intentioned. And that's why we have these agreements. And I hear what you're saying. And but we get stigmatized so easily, right? And they all intersect, and it's a lot.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you for that feedback. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm totally bipolar schizophrenic, so I know how it is. So, and like I said, I didn't mean for it to come out the way it worded, and I apologize for that.
I think that was absolutely lovely. And I'm wondering if we can put Darlene's request on one of our listening sessions. Do we have a listening session that sort of intersects with what Darlene is talking about, is my question.
Yes, that's a great question, Lana. Shay and I will be meeting with the leadership team at Groundworks next week. I think it's this week, some point soon. And I think this is good timing, Darlene. As a town committee and as a review process, I'm not sure that we can offer a response in this moment to that situation as it happened, right? But I think being informed, as Kelsey was saying, about the very real-time experiences that are happening in our community, and Great River Terrace is definitely, a community that we want to do a listening session with, if possible. So that just sort of continues to center that, but that is on our list, and we will be scheduling that for this month as well. And I think you'll be a helpful ally too, an ambassador of this project to help schedule that for sure. Yeah, and we're also working on, the care resources as well. And so I think that might be something that could be helpful as well to have in our pocket as we go into listening sessions like this, where again, difficult content and scary things are going to come up, and we want to be able to support people in the moment and attune to grounding and attune to safety needs and active care needs. So thanks for bringing it up. It does really center the reality of what we're talking about here, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the conversation again of I think how powerful the courage of being able to say an ouch is. It really does open the conversation up. And so thanks for demonstrating that, y'all. Much appreciated.
Awesome.
Shay, would you like to, I'm just going to read Gary's commenting in the chat as well. I like the way you all censor your thoughts and take a step back to assess the situations, even when emotions come into play. That takes integrity. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. And yeah, I do think that these kinds of agreements and keeping them alive and not just this document, right? But bring them into life, I think is really an act of integrity. I agree with Gary on that. Shay, do you have a sort of statement to offer for the, Brub, sorry, go for it. I saw your pen.
So this is probably a more unidimensional statement on my part, but I would say don't assume that the police knew everything that you think you knew when they were called to the event, to the place and time. Number one. Number two, police are going to look at whether someone has a gun relative to what the law says, and that's a lot different than what the rental agreement might say.
Mhm.
So the police wouldn't be enforcing the rental agreement. That would be the landlord. So, and I know that in the moment that's kind of scary and all of those things are happening at the same time. But police are probably going to respond just to the case as it arises to them and what facts are relevant to their showing up.
Yeah, good point, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Darlene, I also wanted to ask you, I know that you folks do some restorative circles out there. Have you done that with this, about this incident, and have you, like, I know that's so hard with Zoom. It's like much less, it's harder than being present physically, I think. But is that something that you've maybe chatted with Mel about, or that feels like it could be productive, or is it just too emotionally present for everyone at this point?
Well, no, I did reach out to Mel, but then my phone got shut off. The girl didn't pay the bill after I gave her my money. And so I had to go get a new phone. And I had to wait for some money to come in for that to happen. So I got a new phone, but I got to get a hold of Mel and give her my new number. She does want to come and meet with me at some point, but I've been sick, and then my daughter had her baby, and everything just all happened all at once. So I got bombarded hardcore. So, and my son and his girlfriend are getting married on Friday, and a lot of stuff is happening, and it's just like too crazy. But I am working on getting back a hold of Mel and sitting down with her and getting some help, because it's not just that night. It's a lot of things that's happening that needs to be addressed desperately.
Yeah. Drift, would you like to unmute and share? Go for it. I think you're unmuted.
Oops, can you hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Thank you. I was just going to suggest to Darlene to contact Wyndham and Windsor, because I think they manage that property, and she might get a faster response if she calls them directly.
Thanks, Drift.
Yes, thank you, Drift. We did that also. So we got Wyndham and Windsor on board too. So along with the Vermont State Housing Authority.
Great. So Shay, do you want to offer a statement from the confidentiality? And also, I heard in there's a confidentiality piece and like holding that piece of this work reverently. And one of the things that came up that I said in the task meeting earlier as well is like this tricky balance we're doing as a group of balancing transparency and confidentiality, which are both, integral values to this process, and require a lot of presencing and attunement, like both of them, and then I also heard a piece about like reverence for the sort of use of the information that we're gathering as well, and really making sure that we recognize that, again, the vast majority of the information that comes to this committee will be de-identified already, but the information that we're gathering is really being used for the purpose of this project and what we're informing folks that we're using it for, that we're clear about informed consent.
Yeah, I think that you essentially covered it. I don't know that there's a lot more to say, except that, I think, everyone I've talked to almost has been curious, at least, about how their information will be used and who will have access to it, and a desire for that to be as small of a, pool as possible. I think that we can just continue to affirm that, we're going to remove all identifying information from anybody's, stories they share with us, including people who work at organizations. I think there's some fear, at least in my time in the nonprofit world, of like you know, not wanting to, you know, receive consequences for naming some problems that you see in that world as well. So I think that we can do a really solid job of holding things confidentially. I think Emily and I both do that regularly in our work lives. I also think that if anybody else other than us is going to be co-facilitating or holding any listening sessions, we'll have lots of conversation before that about what that kind of expectation of this process is. And we're going to use that in a really limited capacity, that co-facilitation possibility. Yeah. Is there anything else you need from me about that, Emily? You're muted.
I see that. No, I put a sentence down that I wrote, hold responsibility of confidentiality with reverence and respect informed consent in how information shared is used. But we can troubleshoot that.
2 hands if anybody is wanting to speak. Kelsey, I saw yours, and then also I think Drift.
I just have a super fast question. Now that you've started reaching out to organizations, are you having any worry that we won't get as much engagement? You know, is there any like, I hope people are going to talk with us? I mean, we're all hoping we get as much input as possible, and you're working your magic, I know, but are you a little bit like, oh no, or is it looking good?
I think it's okay. This is a kind of a funny week to be asking people to focus on anything, frankly. I think this week might be a little slower than I had originally planned or thought about. But I think that it will be okay. I think that we have more to share in the anonymous testimony agenda item, but I've also developed an online survey for organizations because of the concern that people might not, just to like increase access in as many different ways as possible, right? There's like, we'll listen to you on the phone, we'll listen to you with your coworkers, we'll listen to you in a public thing, we'll listen to you on the internet. We really want to just like, at least we can do that, right? If people, so far people who have talked to us have seemed really interested in the work and really are hoping that their colleagues also participate, but it's a busy moment also. So we can take a look at that in that agenda item, in the anonymous testimony agenda item, and you all can tell me if you think it's a good or terrible idea, but I did it either way as a draft, just to try to do what I can to increase that access.
I'll dive more into it, maybe the public forum agenda items, but I'm wondering if there seems to be a lot of confusion about what we're doing. You know, when I talk to colleagues or just people ask me about it that know that I'm involved. And so maybe once we get the word out there more and there's more clarity around like what this is and what it isn't, I'm hoping that will ease some anxiety, because I get questions, and I'll bring it up later, that things that we're not affiliated with that might come join the conversation down the road, but not in this chapter, like all that kind of confusion. So anyway, but I'll stop talking for now.
The great things to have in the conversation about, and I think after the anonymous testimony part, we might be able to clarify a little bit of that too. So thanks. Drift, do you have a hand? Is that a Drift hand?
I think that was from old.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, I'll lower it.
Thanks. I can't do that on my phone.
Okay. Great. All right, thank y'all. And Laura, were you able to catch what I said in the notes for the addition of that line?
I have something about, what do I have? Any information we're going to hold with reverence and keep completely confidential. I don't think I got your exact words.
Okay. All right. I can just add it in when you send me the notes.
Okay.
No worries. Because I put it on the slide.
Great.
And then committee members, I'll send the notes to y'all. And if any individual has issue with the language, you can send it back and we can talk about it in a future meeting. Okay. Great. Thank you all for that discussion. Oh, and a quick note on the survey. I was just going to wait till after this meeting. I'm going to send it out tonight probably, or tomorrow morning. So if you can get to it over the week, this is just for the committee members. It's like a halfway point feedback survey. There's like 4 questions, I think, on it. It should be pretty brief. So if you get a chance this week, please try to fill it out.
Is it gonna be a doodle?
It's a Survey Monkey.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier than Doodle, I think. All right, great. And check in on listening sessions and one-on-ones is our next agenda item.
We have scheduled a couple. We're gonna do some with Out in the Open. We've chatted with the Root. We're gonna wait until after this week shakes out to schedule listening sessions with the Root and their programs. We are in the process of scheduling one with Groundworks, people who use Groundworks services and people who use HCRS services. Youth Services got back to us today about all of the possible ways we could engage with those folks. And there's many more organizations that we have reached out to and many that we still have to reach out to keep scheduling listening in all of its forms. I think that, once this tool goes out, I think it will be, once this tool is approved by you all, the anonymous tool, it will be easier for me to send a catch-all everything update email to folks that says, this is here are all the ways you can participate. Until we get that approved, it's a little hard to put everything in one communication. But now that we have public forums scheduled, and once we get the tool running, then we can say, hey, y'all, here are all the ways. Public forums, chat with us. Here's the tool. Send it out. And I think things should take off then a little more, but they're already rolling a bit. I don't feel like I can share the details of the communications I've had, but it seems like people so far have been eager to share, trepidatious about the conditions of the information, the informed consent piece about where the information's going, but there really does need to be a container for people's experiences around community safety systems, including organizations. So if you are out there and you work at an organization and you want to talk to us, please email us at csrt@protonmail.com. If you are a community member who has experienced anything, please reach out. And we will keep reaching out. If we haven't reached out to you, it's not that we don't care. It's because I'm doing more work than is in the budget to be scheduled right now. And I'm trying to keep up with the developments. But I think it's, we have a big month ahead in a big month in the world. But I'm ready for it. And if you all want to, reach out to your people, committee members and people viewing at home and share your thoughts and feelings with us, the online tool will be available soon. And the phone calls are always available through that email address so far. So Emily put our email in the chat. That's that.
Thanks, Shay, for the update. Any questions or concerns, opinions? All righty. Reports from working groups. I can start just briefly with the the BPD review task group. We met today just to go over the process of looking at the documents and orienting to what they are and how to sort of move through them in a way where we're gathering information only from the documents and sort of determining what further information that we're going to need. And I feel excited about several people doing that because we'll get several different kind of thought, perspectives and processes and processing styles in doing that. And so we walked through the spreadsheet to sort of ask questions and answer questions and gather questions. And then we'll have another meeting in a couple of weeks to check in. But for the most part, everyone's looking at the documentation and sort of gathering the data, the information that feels important and relevant, and also sort of formulating questions that then we can sort of be more curious about and get access to more documentation or data if needed, as needed. Anyone else working on that task want to say anything about it? We did talk about the challenge of balancing transparency and confidentiality with this process as well. And we talked about the ensuring as a smaller group of committee members that we're not making decisions for the committee in that space, but that we're really just gathering information and synthesizing that information, not in a decisional way, but in a kind of getting it in one place and picking out what's relevant for this process, and then inquiring further.
Thanks. I think that the public forum progress is going to not be super relevant, because I think in this meeting we have an agenda item that's all of us talking about what we want, and then from there we can have a meeting this week to like pump it out. And the ecosystems map committee has talked a little bit, but we're going to have a meeting this week I've made a draft. The draft isn't really very relevant until we get the information from the listening, right? It's like I can name the organizations in town, but the whole purpose of listening is in part to organizational voices, is to like map out how they're connected or disconnected, formally or informally, and what's the relationship between different sort of functioning bodies of that web, is the information that we're discovering through the process. So I think that this week in our meeting, we'll probably, Maya and Emily and I will talk about the best forms for that, but we can't really fill it in until a little more listening occurs. But it's rolling. Yeah.
All righty. So would y'all like to talk about the anonymous testimony and look at the drafts of the surveys and then take a break, or take a break now and come back and do the survey and the public forum agenda items? Any opinions?
I mean, I think that's probably going to take a chunk of time, so maybe it makes sense to take a break now.
That's what I was going to say too.
That's what I'm feeling. Is that cool with folks? Great. So it is 6:48. Let's come back at a 6:53, 5-minute break. All right. Thank you.
Welcome back.
So I'm going to pin, well, Shay, shall I go for it and share one of the surveys, or do you want to, okay. Do you want to start?
I can talk while you're pulling it up.
You want to start with the
community member.
Yep. Okay. Great.
So, at a previous meeting, we, you all gave me your ideas for most essential questions to ask the public. And then again, in another meeting, the most essential questions to ask sort of organizations. And so I did some heavy editing, and the committee chipped in just a little bit, and we put those into a Google Forms survey. There is a way to set up Google Forms, which we did, that does not collect any identifying information. So this form doesn't require a person to use their email address. It doesn't record any email addresses or anything like that. It starts at the beginning with what is this survey? Who are we and what are we doing? We can read that in this space if you'd like me to, but maybe I'll give you an overview first. How will it be used? That's that piece that we just mentioned that everyone's so curious about. And that's I think that section, if you can scroll down just a little bit, Emily, is just from our proposal. It's language from our proposal. A few quotes about the type of information that we're looking for from people and the way that we're going to gather it. There's a link to our full proposal, and there's a link to our meetings, agendas and minutes link so folks can participate. The next little moment of information is where to get support. If you would like some support, there's a doc there that has just a couple of links to the Vermont support line, which is a 24/7 support line, the Women's Freedom Center crisis line, Trans Lifeline, and a pod mapping worksheet, which is a type of do-it-yourself support network building. And Drift and I have talked about putting on some more resources that are particularly BIPOC focused. However, there aren't a lot of those that are as immediately accessible as a hotline, so we can check in more about that. But there are lots of places that will like connect a BIPOC person with a inclusive therapist or something, but a little bit less like if you need support right now. So we can talk about that more. There's the deadline and our email, and then there's a bunch of questions. There's a question about folks' identity, if they would like to share anything about their identity that would be relevant to the process. It affirms again that that's totally voluntary and will be de-identified and might help us see patterns, but is not required. There's the next session of questions is vision, the sort of larger visioning questions that we had. What would a totally safe Brattleboro look like? What does safety mean to you? What are your support systems? Who do you turn to for help? What supports your wellness and thriving and safety? What do you think might better support you in those ways? What are the biggest threats to your community safety? What do your daily interactions with police or policing look like or feel like? And what is the community already doing well to support community safety? The next section is the section that we have, in our proposal named, which is making space for people who've had direct contact with these systems to share their experiences with these systems, positive and negative, any type of interaction that folks want to share. It lays out in the introductory paragraph the goal, what community safety response systems mean. That's kind of vague language. We make it clear that that could be policing, DCF intervention, psychiatric intervention, or mental health crisis response, emergency response, or something that somebody has to share that they feel like is relevant that we haven't named here, right? To be open. And again, in the last little paragraph of that introduction, what are we going to do with this? It might help us to make our recommendations to the select board that actually reflect the realities of our community. You can share as much or as little as you want. We're not proving or disproving anything here. We will reverently hold these things confidentially and use them in our report. And then the rest of the questions are a little more nitty gritty. What type of experience would you like to share with us? Did you experience danger or harm? Did you seek help or support? You experienced arrest? Did you experience some police interaction? Department of Children and Families involvement or intervention? Psychiatric or mental health intervention? Observed an interaction or intervention, or supported someone who experienced an interaction or intervention, or other. You can check as many of those as you'd like, and you can share as many of those as you'd like if you're a respondent to the survey. There's space to just freely write about that experience, any of those experiences. There's space to talk about whether or not you received a response from, someone, if you were seeking one or not, if it was wanted or unwanted by you or other people, if you've been arrested or incarcerated or experienced police interaction, what was that like? What was the impact? What happened? If you experienced danger, harm, or unsafety, did you seek help from any existing systems? What led you to the decision whether or not you wanted to seek help? How did you choose what to do? Were you concerned about the consequences of seeking help? If you were concerned, what were you concerned about? If you sought help, what was your experience like? If you sought help, was your experience positive, negative, neutral, or both positive and negative, as so many experiences are? If you experienced anything positive, what worked about the help you received? If you experienced anything negative or couldn't access adequate support, what didn't work or what led to a negative outcome? If you experienced anything negative, did the system become aware that the response was harmful or unsatisfactory or bad? And how were they made aware? What was their response? This is that question about sort of like complaints and follow through, trying to leave it open, but also specific. What were you hoping would happen if you had a dangerous or harmful experience and sought support? What did you expect would happen? And what was different about what occurred than what you hoped or expected, if anything? What has been the most helpful to you around your experience? What worked? And what resource, support, or response do you wish had been available to you in that moment, if any? That's the end of the like sharing the nitty gritty of your response section as it stands now, though that's open to editing. And then at the end, there's a thank you. There's a this creative question. What's your vision for a safer Brattleboro? You could write about it. You could paint it. You can make a video of yourself dancing about it. You could sing a folk song about it. You can make a puppet show about it. You could send it to us in our email. You could put it right there in the box. And a note about how we would not share that information unless it was explicitly asked for. And open space to share anything else. Another note at the bottom about how to reach us. And that is the sum total of draft number 1 of our anonymous tool for community members.
That's awesome, Shay. You did an awesome job on that.
Hey, thanks, Darlene. It says in the beginning, I know I didn't read the whole beginning out, and I could if folks feel that's important, but it does say, like, you know, you can fill out as much as you want. You don't have to. It's all totally voluntary. You can skip around. Whatever's not relevant to you, don't worry about it, you know. So I hope that folks, it's a lot. You all gave me a lot of good questions. This is the edited down version, if you can imagine that. So Maya and others gave me some good feedback about what redundancies we could continue to collapse so that it's smaller. At the beginning, I know it was a lot of information, but as Kelsey said, a lot of people are asking us for a lot of clarity before they want to share what they're sharing. So I figured it might be better to, overstate how it might be used than to understate it, and to make sure that people had links to our proposal and links to our meetings and minutes and everything so that they can see for themselves if they want to share with us or not. Kelsey, did you have a hand?
Yeah, I wanted to say it's awesome. And I think the biggest concern is deadline's December 1st. So let's get this thing out. But it's fantastic. Thank you, everyone who worked on this. And Shay, it's really captures kind of the whole spectrum of input. And I was going to ask whether you have the option to skip or if it's required that you fill in fields. And it's really great that you are allowing to skip fields so people that are overwhelmed don't.
There's no required questions at all. And you can just go next. Even if you fill out nothing, you can click next all the way to the end and say, you can only fill out, is there anything else you want to share with us even? So we're hoping that people can just fill out what is useful to them to fill out and nothing else. And then also, we don't need to move to this yet, but I mirrored a lot of this language in a separate survey that we didn't talk about yet as a committee for organizations. In case people can't get to the phone call, in case people are feeling like they wanted to collect their words more thoughtfully before they shared and in writing. There's another survey we can look at in a minute after we talk about this one. That's the organizational questions you all gave me in a similar thing for organizations. So, but about this one, do folks feel like they need to read through it more thoroughly before we approve it and send it out? Do folks feel like they feel generally supportive of it? Where are you all feeling about this survey?
I support it 100%.
Thanks, Sterling.
I second that.
I just have two really nitpicky things. Sorry to be minute.
Please do it.
I was just wondering, wanted to double check that those links are going to actually work, because I know that in the draft version they didn't.
I think that if you click on preview up at the top of the page,
okay.
What it actually looks like. If you go to the eyeball, Emily, there's like an eyeball icon.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, you can see if they're blue and if they
okay. Great.
actually. We'll definitely fix them if they don't. That's a great feedback, Maya.
Can y'all see what I can see? Can you see the link?
Yep.
I can see it crystal clear.
You can see the proposal here, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So that worked. And then I never know with screen sharing if it shares the next screen. Great. Great. Yeah, it looks like they work. Great question, Maya. Thank you.
Emily, you can click on the support document right below and make sure that works.
Oh, yeah.
And that we might add to, just to say, we add some more BIPOC specific resources. But that's the pathways line and a link to them, which is a 24/7 line that's less likely to call police about people's experiences. There's the Women's Freedom Center crisis line, and there's the Trans Life line. And then that last link is to a worksheet about how to map out the support people in your life. So those are the links.
Great. I'm glad they work. Thanks for checking.
I am giving you snaps, girl. Yeah.
Seriously, Shay, this is so much labor. Thank you so much for putting this in. And
yeah, I also feel like it looks great. I think we should get ready to use it.
Yeah, me too. I think we should think that.
Now I have a question. Can the people that are on the board do this survey too?
Yes.
Awesome.
I think anybody who's who lives in Brattleboro, who has an opinion about safety or has experienced danger or unsafety or has ever interacted with any of these systems is welcome to participate as soon as we launch it. Not before, please, because otherwise we're not ready to collect your information. But yeah.
And just to follow up on that, I just want to say that, in all communities and certainly in small communities like ours, there's a lot of dual roles that we play, right? And so somebody might, be a person who works in a community safety professional role and also has had their own personal experiences, either in that role and or as a community member outside of that role. And so folks can engage in a variety of different ways and share their stories and perspectives from a variety of different from those different lenses. And so I think having this ready to go, and all the committee members also now, we all have a tool that when we're talking about the project as ambassadors of the project, we can direct folks either as a resident of Brattleboro and somebody that that wants to share a community safety experience, and as a professional, if we approve the survey for community safety professionals, this is going to be, I think, hopefully our widest access point for the information.
And I want to say again that it says many times within the survey that if you want to share further, or if you'd rather share in a different way, here are the other ways. And we could also add into the text of this the dates of our public forums once they become. So if we have a link to that, we can add that to the beginning text later. So I think it hopefully is a landing spot for folks. It lets folks know how they can get in touch with us otherwise, and gives space for anybody's voice to be included who's an area resident. And then the other one, I don't know if we want to vote on this one, or if we want to click over to the other one.
I think we should vote on this one before we move on. if folks are up for that. Is there any dissent or everyone's a thumbs up? Okay, Drift, anything you want to say, Bob? Your video's out, but maybe you're still there. Darlene's a thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I totally love it.
Great. Bob,
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
You're a little choppy on the
Can you
sound.
hear me?
Yeah, that was solid. But now we lost you again.
Can you hear or no?
No, it's
Yeah.
choppy.
So I just had a couple of questions, if I might.
Go for it.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. That's good. Okay. I couldn't read it quickly as it was scrolling.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't catch it as it was scrolling to see where it said. When is the first time that it says that you can skip around? That because I'm wondering whether it'll screen out people who won't be reading past the first paragraph. So that was one question.
Mhm.
And then the only point of contact is the email, fundamentally, or the public forum, right?
Mhm.
If we have that in there, there's no other way of contacting.
Not yet. I think that if you all want us to get a phone number, that's potentially doable. I would say that it's been mostly a very supported process, and we've received a little tiny infinitesimally small amount of sort of
And then, are you still with me?
yeah.
Shay's speaking.
You said you're interested in responses from Brattleboro area residents, but since it's an anonymous,
Mhm.
Bob, if you're able to add what you're saying into the chat, it's really in and out and quite hard to hear you. Some of your sentences are very clear and some are not coming through at all. The two questions that I heard from Bob so far while he's typing are how early does it say that you can skip around? And I definitely would take a friendly amendment to move that right up to the top if folks feel like that would be helpful. And the second one is about resident status. We don't have a question on there about that yet, although we could ask, what community do you live in, or something like that if folks wanted
okay.
that.
I wasn't.
I mean, if the concern is that people are going to be fraudulent and say that they live in the community when they don't, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that that's a legitimate concern. I think that would be so infinitesimal as to not matter. It reminds me of the question of like voter fraud, for instance, which is just not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that we added one sentence on the top part, which is that we do not
The
tolerate
flip side of that is that it's anonymous, so then you're asking residents.
Bob, are you able to hear us? Yeah. Okay.
I would just second Shay saying putting in the amendment of maybe right in the beginning mentioning you can skip through, because for folks that have various barriers, it's a lot of content to get through. But we've already named that, so
yeah, I would support putting that right up at the top. Kaz, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just to comment on what Bob was saying, that like even if someone doesn't, like if we're asking what community someone lives in the form,
Sometimes
even if someone doesn't live in Brattleboro or one of the surrounding communities, but they've had, experiences with police intervention or incarceration here in Brattleboro, I think they shouldn't be. I don't think that should be like a qualifying factor if they're talking about, if they're talking about these systems here in Brattleboro, if that's what their experience was.
Yeah.
I will also say that almost everything is like free-form, write your answer. There's not a lot of like multiple choice. So I don't think people are going to like stack it in any way. I think we have a sentence at the beginning that we don't tolerate harassment or threats. And I think we will not be including information that is like threatening or trolling, obviously, but I'm not really concerned about that happening too much. I think for the most part, if people are seemingly participating with any authenticity and sharing any feelings or thoughts about community safety in our area, then we're gonna listen to them. And Bob, again, if you can hear me, I want to say that it's very hard to hear you. And if you're able to put your thoughts into the chat, we will be much better able to engage with them.
Okay, so we're going to add at the beginning of the survey, we're going to add language about making sure folks are aware that they can answer whatever questions they want to. They don't have to answer any questions in particular. And Kelsey is saying in the chat, I'm not entirely sure what Bob is speaking to. I hope you can get a better connection or type it. Yep, agreed. And are folks feeling like we're ready to add that piece in and move forward, or do we need more discussion in particular about this question of residency?
I'm not entirely positive that Bob's question about residency is what we spoke about, right? I'm wondering if we could move on and come back to this when Bob, usually he calls in when he gets a better connection.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm wondering if this is a moment for public comment as well.
Great.
It sounds like the committee is feeling pretty solid, but this might be a moment to invite the participants to speak as needed. Oh, public. Does anyone have anything you want to share?
Share. We are taking public comment.
You can raise your hand, the little blue hand. We will hear from you that way.
Bob said he's in the waiting room.
Can you hear me now?
Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So going back to the residency thing, it just gave me some cognitive dissonance, because you're saying on the one hand you only want people from Brattleboro to respond, on the other hand it's totally anonymous, and to the extent that this is I assume it's a link to a survey document that one can send anywhere, and I might myself be tempted to send it anywhere. And in fact, I have told people that I used to work with in another state that I'm on this committee. And one of them, my former boss, gave me a lot of information, which may or may not be relevant. But it's not particularly relevant to Brattleboro, but it is relevant to the issue of community safety and how one responds to those issues. So I might even suggest that it's relevant to the answers to some of the questions, and I might send, I'll mention his name, Jose, this information and say, do you want to fill this survey out? But tell them you're not from Brattleboro when you respond, so they'll be able to code it properly. Maybe that's the way you deal with that. I don't know. But there is that cognitive dissonance in my mind between the fact that it's anonymous, but that you're looking specifically for Brattleboro. A lot of these issues are not Brattleboro specific either. So there was that. Is December 1st too short? And then since this is a public hearing, I probably shouldn't ask this question. Is December 1st your deadline that you want to publish to the public? And you may have an internal deadline that is more flexible than that in order to figure this out. But is December 1 too short? I think we dealt with the where, if we can say as early as possible that you can skip around. And I don't know about the email business myself. I'm an old guy, so I might use email, I might use a phone. Are there other methods that people will use that they're more friendly with? Maybe it's not a phone, maybe it's Facebook, but maybe we don't want to go there. But then this link could go to Facebook very easily. So that was where I was at, and I'll mute myself.
I would like to respond to some of those great points, Bob. While you were gone, Kaz mentioned that if somebody has experienced, community safety response in Brattleboro and don't live in Brattleboro, then we still want that to be tracked. We don't want to say just because you live in Springfield now and you had interactions with the Bratt PD at some point that you shouldn't be included. So that would be a point in the don't collect where people live information category, potentially. Although we could have it be a question and not a determinant of collecting, of how we deal with the answer, I guess. Regarding the deadline, our deadline for doing our entire report and turning that in is December 31st. And I would imagine that there is a phase after the information gathering phase that's significant, which is more decisional about our recommendations to the select board. That's a part of the process that I do not want to skimp on personally. I want to give us space to do that well. That's where that somewhat arbitrary deadline comes from. It's short, it's a month, but the whole process is short. It's 3 months. And so we can talk about that, but that's where that comes from, is that gives our committee, that gives me time, a little tiny little bit of time to deal with all the answers and then bring it to you all. And us together, Emily and I, and somewhat the committee, make some recommendations. And that's part of the process. So I don't want to skimp on that. And lastly, about the phone, I think that we could potentially get a phone number for this project. I think there are ways of doing that. I'm not personally interested in having my personal cell phone number put on flyers about such hot button topics all over town at all. And that's what I have access to at this moment. But I think that that's a great consideration. I think we can add, luckily, if you all approve this, we can add in additional ways to contact us or extend the deadline later. Yeah, those are some responses. Gary says in the chat, I was wondering if you already have an idea or starting drafting ideas for phase 2. Emily.
Thank you for your visionary and forward thinking, Gary. I think that for our project recommendations, we're hoping to offer sort of phased recommendations, right? Recommendations that are really short term for this budget cycle, right? Which has to do with our December 31st deadline. And then recommendations that sort of short term, medium term, long term recommendations. This project is a lot of work for Shay and I. We heavily underestimated how many hours we would be spending on this project. And so I don't I don't know that the two of us are necessarily envisioning what phase 2 is going to look like after this project, but I do feel excited about phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4 and phase 5 and phase 6, and the fact that this is a very big picture kind of long range arc that we're working towards. So I feel excited about that. Thanks for asking. And yeah, Gary says you're welcome. I'm sorry, that's just me, the planner. I know, I'm with you. And Kelsey, I think if we can get this out this week, sticking to the 12/1 deadline makes sense. Yeah. I think for now, we can also we can see where we're at on 12/1. And if we've got a ton of content to work through, then it makes sense maybe to stick with that deadline. If we feel we have capacity to get more content, we could go another week. And we can probably make that decision on our November 30th committee meeting, because we have a committee meeting that date. So we can get information. We can put that on our agenda to figure out how much info, where we feel like we might be at, and the committee can make that decision probably on that November 30th. And then Maya's saying, I'll just quickly add in terms of timeline, that online surveys are a great thing to have some urgency behind when you ask people to do them. If they have too long, they will forget and never do them. I agree that. And I think urgency and persistence is another word I would put in there. Reminders, friendly reminders. And I think that's a great plan. I have a thought about the Brattleboro piece. I think that we can, if the committee wants to, we can add a question about something as simple as, do you live in Brattleboro, yes or no? I don't think that can be in any way, I don't think that we can expect or have that in any way be linked to any individual answers on the survey, right? So what it would look like is that's a data element to say, 95 or 90% of the people who filled out the survey live in Brattleboro, right? That information is what it is. I don't know if it's useful.
Brattleboro or surrounding towns.
I'm sorry?
Brattleboro or surrounding towns.
Right. Brattleboro surrounding towns. I think we can't, because first of all, where you live is a piece of identifying information. And second of all, we're not using this data in any individualized way. So we're not really going to be able to link any of that kind of data to the information shared. Then I just pose the question back to the committee of does that feel like a relevant piece of information for the report process, right? Of having a number of percentage of how many people that filled out the survey live in Brattleboro surrounding areas. Yeah, Kelsey.
I know I'm always raising my hand, but it isn't feel important to me, but that's because I don't live in Brattleboro, yet I have a lot of experience with being policed in Brattleboro. So it feels important to me that, again, the surrounding towns can be a part of it, which we're already doing. I just don't feel like it matters to capture that data in that way.
I think it says clearly at the beginning that it's about people's experiences of safety, danger, and harm and community response in Brattleboro. And I hope that people are honest. I think if we're getting a bunch of trolling, we're going to have to alter it in other ways anyway, right? If there's people who are from far away, who are just saying whatever their political slogan is and leaving or whatever, we're just going to either filter that out. That's not relevant. We're asking for this specific thing. Or we're going to alter the way that the survey works so that it works better for us. But for now, I think it's clear. It says Brattleboro Community Safety Review right at the top. My hope is that people will engage authentically, as they have throughout this process, as they have with the committee meetings and everything else. So,
and as
I don't
far
want to be restrictive, but yeah, go ahead, Lon.
No, that's okay. As far as the survey is written, I mean, it's going to be so obvious if someone is trolling us.
Right. Great. All right. Does anyone have dissent to move forward with the survey without adding a residency question?
Just want to read from the chat for a moment. Darlene says, I think the survey looks awesome. We should get it out ASAP. Thanks, Darlene. And Gary says, so question, holidays are coming up on us. So what do you expect and how many returns on your surveys where you're forecasting for returns? Just asking.
I'm forecasting that everyone is going to bring this to their Thanksgiving Zoom table And everybody is going to take a moment out of this wild election cycle and just put a little word into their community's local actions around community safety. And that we are going to blast the word so far out that lots of people have the ability to speak up if they want to. And
I totally agree with Shay.
That's my forecast. That's my projection. It's a optimistic projection.
And I just want to add to that, if for anybody who's on the committee, for anyone who's following along this process, either in the meetings or on BCTV, just reminding folks that they can just go in, if they have 5 minutes, share as much information as they want to or can. It is totally up to each person how much information they share, if they answer any of the questions at all. As Shay said, you can scroll down, you can find one open text box and just write everything you have to say in that one open text box. So, I think we want to make that more prominent at the very beginning of the text in the survey, because I get lost a little bit in the text of the survey, although I think it's important for people who really need the detail orientation to feel comfortable and safe sharing.
We'll put the basic minimum stuff in a box right up the front, and then if you want more info, here it is.
I like that. And I think when you're sharing it with the communities of people that you've built trust with, I think making sure you're saying that out loud, because I think that's going to be a big thing for folks.
Can we coordinate with the library somehow? I feel like if someone has a lot to say here, this is going to be an extremely challenging thing to do on your phone with your thumbs. Is there some way we can training is maybe overstating it, but make the library folks aware of this, and that make it so that they're making it easy for people to get on a computer and do this, especially if, their COVID precautions are I think there's 20-minute windows that you can be in the library right now, maybe working around that somehow if people really have a lot that they want to get in there and don't have access to a laptop or computer at home.
We can reach out to them. I can't guarantee anything without talking to them, but I'm happy to reach out to the library and ask about collaboration, about access. That sounds great. They've already offered many different types of access for committee members and things. So
even some signage or I think anything we can do to make it super accessible there will go a long way.
Great. And we're getting a thumbs up from Peter, I'm noticing. Peter, is there anything you want to say about that, or is the thumbs up good? Thumbs up. Cool. Thanks, Peter.
Has a hand up also. I don't know if that's an old hand or a new hand.
Great. Also, Gary says, so a turkey and a survey. Awesome. Digest both.
I think this might be a good time. I'm sorry, you called on my hand, right?
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay. I think this would be a good time for me to quickly bring up the thought I had about hopefully getting more clarity out to the community of what this is and what it isn't, because as I've started trying to talk to people that I, collaborate with and other organizations, hoping they'll engage with you, facilitators and other just community members that have experiences, but they've kept them very private, but would like to contribute at the same time. There seems to be a lot of confusion about, is this part of the movement of what we saw at Mocha Joe's last week, or is this basically our whole committee and this movement sort of made a determination of what we think, and we're going to present all the reasons why, and to the select board. And so I hope I'm being clear, but it's certainly, from my mind, at least I'm just one voice on the committee, in no way. I hope that we're going about this in a really positive way, and the public forums, when we invite public input, I'm really hoping that we invite folks that have direct experience with policing and harm, and not folks that maybe are very passionate about political movements, but don't necessarily have direct involvement, because I think it creates a lot of confusion, and maybe for folks on the more conservative side that maybe want to participate, it might dissuade them from doing so. And so I hope I'm being clear, but I will only speak for myself, but I'm definitely not in support of sort of that tactic that we saw last week. And I hope that we can get that word out there, not using that as an example, but there is some, I think, pause, sort of people not really even paying attention to what we're doing because they're already writing it off as the perspective is, or the decisions have already been made and what our recommendation will be. Am I being clear?
Somewhat. I feel like,
Somewhat.
I mean, regarding the tactic of the Mokajo strikers, I don't think the committee's going to go on strike, probably. You know what I mean?
No, I guess what I'm saying is like the example of, we're looking for input and we're going to put that alongside with the BPD review and just sort of put together a recommendation to the select board, right? This isn't sort of a continuation of a specific sort of the recommendation hasn't been formed yet, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? And so I've been speaking to people that were interested sort of as the summer is progressing and, political climate. So we all know it's so intense. And I think some people are sort of backing off, not really paying attention and sort of writing it off as if it's this extremist stance. And I certainly don't see that as what it is. I think this is a positive movement and we're trying to bring voices into the spotlight that need to be heard, not necessarily aiming fire at others. Does that make sense?
If I can speak to that, Kelsey, I was thinking about this and so there's one key point I want to think about, which is that this is happening because of all of the protests and all of the movements that have happened, right? And some of those are more radical and some of those might be not as palatable to the masses. And there is a habit and a pattern of movements progressing and people who were on board in the beginning sort of backpedaling and saying, oh no, you're too radical. It's not yet time, right? Let's wait. And that happened. We can see that with Martin Luther King, with Rosa Parks, with anyone. And so I'm sure some of that is happening now. And a lot of the people who came out of the woodworks and who were like Black Lives Matter, defund the police, are now saying, oh no, it's too radical. And so while I want to say that this is a community process and that we're Brattleboro, we are very different. We are not Seattle, we are not DC. However, the systems are the systems and they still need to be dismantled and they still need to be changed. And we are looking at them structurally from a community standpoint. And I don't want us to become swayed by the people who are afraid of change. And so I want us to remember that all members of our community are valuable, are members of our community. And yet this process started on the backs of protesters because Black people were being killed. Mm-hmm. This process did not start to pacify anyone. It started, with a roar. And it started by taking over and taking things back. And I don't want to start walking that back. And I don't want to start saying that this is not a radical movement. This is not a radical moment. Because if it's not palatable, that means we're doing something right. If it's uncomfortable, we are doing something right. If it starts feeling comfortable and we start becoming complacent, then I guarantee you we are on the wrong path right now.
I completely agree with you. And I want to be part of radical change. And I'm so excited that this is happening and that the select board agreed to it, and here we are. I guess what I'm saying is in our public forums, right, where we're hoping that people will come forward and share their vulnerable stories. I hope that when we have limited time, I hope that, and we'll talk about this more in our public forums, but like we can frame it in a way that it's not dominated by people that are very passionate about these movements, but don't necessarily have a direct experience, because those things are so important. But what we're trying to do right now is give voices to the people that are directly harmed, directly involved, work within the systems, right? And so I'm totally with you, and I'm so grateful for these movements. I guess I'm just trying to think about that as we're thinking about how when we get the word out there and when we're holding these spaces that we have very limited time, and how do we navigate including that passion and the voice, but in a way that's hopefully going to lend to this report, right? In a limited amount of time.
I think the beautiful thing about Brattleboro is that, while we might be a very white, very small state and a small town, we can all hold each other in a way that I don't see happening in other places. And I think that this is a place where so many different people can come to the table and we can all be respectful. And we have our wonderful two facilitators here to keep us on track And I think you're making some amazing points, Kelsey, and I definitely don't think you're disagreeing with me in any way, shape, or form. I just want to make sure that I am clear in what I am seeing this process as and where it began, because I know that it began on the backs of my people, and I want to make sure that that is continuously brought home.
And activists pushed it through. Activists pushed the proposals through.
Exactly.
We said the reason the proposals went through is because we said this process is also going to listen to everybody, no matter what your perspective. The closer to the pain, the closer to the struggle, the closer to harm and danger and vulnerability you are, the more we're going to try to elevate you, but we're going to listen to you no matter what, whoever you are. And I think that there's a balance there that's really important to me. That's like, we're making space for anybody to participate. So far, the people who want to participate mostly are people who are either working in the system or more policed. I also don't want to ever assume that I know how policed a person is who's striking or anything else, right? I don't know what each of those people's experience are, but I'm really grateful for both of your perspectives about that. And I think one tool that we have as facilitators that we can use is that when we're doing listening sessions or talking to people who are organizing or talking to people who work in the systems, we can ask them, can you pass along the possibility of speaking at this public forum to the folks you know who have experienced this stuff, to people who have, to the, groups of people who are already talking about their experiences with DCF or policing or mental health crisis response or like these different kind of interventions that we're sort of examining. Can we make sure that we're being explicitly invitational to those folks first? And then if other people want to show up because they don't believe in the project or they really do and they have no lived experience or whatever else, those people can come too, second, after the people who've lived it first, maybe. That's my hope. My other hope is that we move on pretty quick because I want to show you this other survey so we can also get that out. And I want to make sure that we have time for the rest of our agenda as well. But I also don't want to cut off conversation ever. So
yeah, and I just really quickly add a thought, which is just that, like, in communicating with people about this, I think the word research feels very neutral to a lot of people, and emphasizing that we're doing research and we're gathering perspectives before we make recommendations could help diffuse a little bit of that energy or help people feel like they can have a voice.
I want to counter that for just a second. I'm a science-loving person, and I personally love research, but I know that for Black people in the country, the word research does not make us comfortable. I'm thinking about Tuskegee. I'm thinking about forced sterilizations. I mean, there's a long history of research that is really bad for marginalized communities. People, Satanism. I know Kaz, you might have.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I was going to say for mad folks, for psychiatrically level folks, same. The research is scary a lot of the time.
Yeah.
We are gathering info in a really relational way. That's what we said. We're not going to be sticking rigidly to a script in our interview like a telemarketer. We're not going to be pushing the conversation in a different direction than it's going to go. When we've been having these conversations, half the questions go away because a person is sharing about some stuff that really happened to them. And I'm trying to gather what are the most essential parts of what that person's sharing and get back to the information. And my hope is that we can keep, I said it before, there's a balance of pressure and cooperation that's happening here that I hope keeps happening. It's not going to be only cooperation and it's not going to be only pressure, I think, in this specific phase of this specific project. The work will continue in 100 ways once our report is done. But our job is to listen to everybody, especially people who've experienced it the most, make recommendations that reflect that, and then pass the baton.
Yeah, and I'd like to add just a couple of things. And I just so appreciate this conversation. I know we may not get through all of our agenda, but this conversation is exactly where it is at and where it needs to be at. And so I appreciate that. And Kelsey, I appreciate what you're bringing up because I do want to attune to the skepticism and the curiosity and the questioning of our community around what we're doing here. And thank you for calling that in. And Lana and Kaz, and Maya, thanks for what you're sharing as well. And I think that I want to name that not only was this initiated by global, national, and like really pressurized movements, pressurized because there has been so much harm to so many communities that has been unaddressed, that we are calling in our community, right? Really looking at, really learning about and dismantling. But also the call to really listen to what our community is experiencing, right? And the question about like, oh, I'm not going to participate because the recommendations are already determined. I think that's I get why people feel that way. And I think I really appreciate you calling that in, Kelsey, because I think that people do feel that way. And what I want to say is this would be a heck of a lot of work for us to do just to create a front. I mean, frankly, we are doing a ton of work, and we really do want to presence this in our current reality as a community. And I know that there are huge national, international contexts to that, and we want to make sure we stay grounded in that context as well, right? We also can't get lost in that with, outside of that context. So Lana, thank you so much for calling that in, the historical context and the current global context and the current national context. But I want to really name the somatic quality too of the movement that brought us to this moment, our towns movement, and the BIPOC folks that really were a deep part of the activism of getting us to this moment, who really asked us to bring in the body and bring in all of the parts of ourselves, and say that it takes a lot of courage to do what we're asking folks to do. It takes so much courage to say, this happened to me. And it takes so much courage for you all to be listening, and to be showing up in this way. So I just kind of want to name the courage and say, listening is really what we're doing. And we are going to be the reason we are leaving a whole month of December to distill all the information we listen to, so that we can formalize a report and recommendations based on what we've heard. We do have ideas. We do have national context. We're not the only one doing this work. We have other movements and we have other models that we are aware of, and that will be part of our synthesis. So I get where that concern comes from, but we are not doing this as a distraction mechanism. This is a ton of work. I would never send on board for that. We are absolutely going to be integrating the present moment experience of what we're learning from people in our town into the report that we're giving to our town's select board. But thank you for bringing this up, because I do think people are unsure about that.
I just want to be really clear that I really value what's going on and really respect you, Shay and Emily, and the proposal. And so I guess I'm always just trying to, like, how do we reach as many people? Like, this is just so important to me, I have to say, and for so many reasons. And we know we're up against a lot of opposition. And so anyway, but this isn't a front, right? And so anyway, but it's out there. Like, a lot of people are like, what committee? Yeah. Or they heard about it and now they're stopped paying attention. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah. And I want to name, Lana said in the chat, I want to put out there that I have so much trust and faith in the members of this committee. Thank you, likewise. And Gary says, I concur, keep the faith. Thanks, Gary. And I'll quote Adrienne Marie Brown from Emergent Strategy, who says, trust the people and the people become trustworthy. And move at the speed of trust.
Yeah.
Right? So we can't let the urgency be our momentum, right? We got to move at the speed of trust too.
And Miriam Kaba, another all-star, I'm going to have to paraphrase too much, but says, we have to move with the urgency of the moment and the patience of 1,000 lifetimes in this work. There's like stuff that has to happen now. The budget will happen. There's a budget that's going to come out. How's our community going to pitch in to decide about that together? And there's also so much work that we can't do everything. We don't know what everything even is yet, because we're still growing that together. So I'm really grateful for all of y'all participating in this with us. It's really helpful to do it as a team. I would hate to do this alone.
So I'm gonna make a proposal for our last 10 minutes, because we only have 10 minutes. Gary has a hand up. I'd like to hear from Gary. And then I'm wondering if we can email the committee a link to the organizational survey, and the committee can just send right back to us via email your thoughts or feedback on the survey. And then we can move forward from there. But that would require this committee to vote that, yes, we want an anonymous organizational survey. So that,
but I can't put it for another week, which does give me pause. I want to say we, you know, everybody's like, how's it going? Are you really, you know, is it rolling? And it's rolling as much as it can without y'all's stamp.
Shay,
You know,
can we not approve it here and just integrate feedback?
I don't know. I don't think that they can approve something in this meeting that they haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
I don't know. That seems a little. I would love to fast track it, but I don't know that that's like.
Yeah.
And we can't see it over email and vote yes over email.
I don't think we can vote.
No, we can't. We can't make decisions over email.
The committee.
Can we just pull it up?
Yep.
If it's okay to use our time that way, I would rather folks send me feedback over email about what they think about our public forum language, and then I can draft that and bring that to you all next time.
Yeah, although that needs to get out also.
I know. That's why I was trying to move us along, and I'm grateful for the deep conversation, but I'm at the whim of the committee on so many of my tasks.
So this stuff is similar to what we just saw, right?
Almost exactly the same. It's a little bit different in that it says who it's for, and who it's for is people who work in organizations. It talks about who those organizations are. It talks about, just like it did before, how will it be used? It's a slightly different section of the proposal. It's the part that's relevant to this. How will it be used? It talks about what we will create at the end of our process, the report, what the report will look like. Same links to our info, same support link to people who need support about sharing. Same December 1st deadline. First questions are, what organization or safety system do you work in? What's your role? It will be de-identified. Do you want to share any aspect of your identity with us? Exactly the same. Same vision questions largely. What would a totally safe Brattleboro look like? What does safety mean? What are the biggest threats to the people you support or serve or organize? What's our community already doing well to support safety? And then these are the questions you all gave me about what part of community safety is your org's responsibility? Who are your collaborators? What are limits to your collaboration? Are there people that you can't collaborate with, and why? What are the biases you see? What is the inequality that you see? How are those things being addressed? Have you had any training about bias? That's awesome. What do you wish that everyone could get trained in? What's an example of a success in your work? And did it happen because of the way the system's designed or despite it? And same with a failure. What harm is added to situations by the responses that you see? Are there gaps in the web of community safety? What are the barriers to people getting help that they need? What are the resources that aren't well known? In an ideal world, if given resources, what would you do? Are there models or like ways of dealing with crisis or danger that you love, that you want to see us look at? What cultural changes would have to happen to make your work obsolete? Send us your creative feedback and your paintings and your poems and your ukulele songs. Anything else you'd like to share with us? Booyah. Thank you so much. Here's our email. That's it. Kaz, you have a hand.
I do. I'm just wondering, the only comment I guess I have or question I have is the comment about what are the barriers to people getting the help they need. I'm wondering if there's perhaps like a less prescriptive or paternalistic way to ask that question.
Emily, would you be able to go up to that actual question?
Yes.
Barriers
because I mean, I've just encountered a lot of people in the community, whether in service roles or just in relationship roles, who have specific ideas about what people need, and that those individuals might have very different needs than what's being sort of prescribed to them. And so I'm wondering if there's just a way to tweak that question.
I'm wondering if it could be, what do the people you support express that they need, or or what do you hear that the people you support need from, because a lot of times you hear it from the people you know.
Right. So like, what barriers do people face in? Yeah, I don't know how to. Sorry, I don't know how
Just
to
change it to want the help that they want.
want the help that they want, or the help that they identify they need.
Yeah.
I like that.
What barriers? Yes.
Thanks.
Great. What are barriers to, can you say the question that you had again, Kaz? People getting the help.
Since you're on your phone, I can write the edit into the document.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what are the barriers to people getting the help that they identify that they need, or that they express that they need? Something along those lines, so that it's more centered on what the person perhaps actually needs, and what, like, like, oh, if I'm in a support role for someone, I might think that they need X, Y, and Z, but that, yeah, sorry.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Kaz. It's great.
Yeah, I agree, Cass. Thank you. That's great. Oh, look at that happening in real time. Gotta love Google.
Is that too wordy? Or should I make it want that they want? Or I don't know. Or just leave it.
I think.
Can
Sorry,
we give permission to like reword it within the way we're still asking for it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I feel confident in Shay's ability to take that sentence and hold its meaning and rework it so that it sounds badass.
I actually like want personally, because it kind of gives us that sense of, the help, like if folks would choose what they want, in terms of types of support. That's my opinion.
I mean, I go back and forth on this, because like, needs are real also, but
I know.
Like, I want to have the ability to be the person determining what it is that I need.
Right.
All right. How about we approve it this way, and then you bring your edits next time, and if we need to change it for the next time, we can edit it, and we can edit it at any time, but we'll have this version for right now and then change it next week if needed.
I motion to approve.
Boom. All in favor with the thumbs? Great.
Awesome. Drift, anything you wanna, is Drift still with us? No. Okay. So are we approving, but we approved the other one as well, right? Okay. So we came back around to Bob's questions. Okay, we have 2 surveys that are ready to go out. I wonder if we can ask this committee to empower Shay and I to write and put out a press release for the public forums. Or Shay and because I don't think we can wait till next Monday to get that word out. And then we can attach these links as well to that press release. Anyone having a dissent or concern?
Blast it out there.
We'll send you all the links so you can blast it too.
Y'all are just amazing. Somehow we get through like 1/4 of the agenda with 10 minutes to left of the meeting, and then we're just blow through it.
I think if you all have more thoughts next time, things are alive, and we can bring it up next time also. I don't want to steamroll anybody's
totally
important feedback.
And as always,
stuff moving. Both.
And as always, if there's something you want to see on an agenda for our meeting, go ahead and send it to Shay and I, and we can add it to the agenda. We have to move quick though, because the agendas are due to the town on Thursdays. And so we're just recovering from the meetings by Tuesday evening, and then we're getting ready for the next one. So, so if thoughts are alive, send them as soon as you have them in terms of next agendas. We have 1 minute left.
My only quick question about you sending out the press release about the public forums is we haven't talked about like whether we're going to structure them the time limits or anything like that, but maybe we could get that word out there secondary. I don't know, just putting that out there, but I think timeliness of getting it out is the most important thing.
I think that we can put out a press release that says when they will be and the approximate like theme of them. and that folks can find more information at our link on the town website, and we can put out the surveys also, and the information can also be put in the beginning of the survey. And that way people will be able to access our information more easily than now, where we're kind of amorphous. We don't really have much on the web. And I think once people can see a little more from us, then they might be a little more willing to reach out.
We can get the Zoom links out. Yeah. And then next Monday, we'll spend a fair amount of time planning what those public forums are actually going to look like and feel like.
And the public forum committee is going to maybe meet this week with me, and we'll do it.
Great. We're at time. Thank you all so much. And again, thank you to our interpreters, Christine and Janet, for joining us again today. And yeah.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see y'all next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, Gary. Say good night.
Good night, Gary.
Good night, Gary.